of all, I just want to say thanks for both organizations for having me. It's an honor to get to know you guys, support you guys in a pretty challenging journey, I'm imagining, or envisioning. I don't know, have you guys ever been introduced before and you go, is that me? It sounded kind of weird. Just real quick, I work a lot at Haas and I do a bunch of work at Google. And a lot of the work that I'm doing is really trying to help folks figure out how to switch a transition. So I'll be really honest with you guys. I have not worked much with PhDs, but a lot of the stuff that I'm about to talk about is completely relevant. So I first of all just want to put that out there and be completely transparent. What I'd like you guys to do is stand up, rise and shine. What you're going to do is you're going to go meet your new best friend, okay? And your new best friend is someone you probably haven't met before. And what I'd like you to do is you're going to hang out for about 57 seconds, and you're going to talk about what it is, what the heck you want to get out of this workshop in the next 53 minutes. So go for it. What did you guys come up with? What the heck do you want to take away from the workshop? Please, not all at once. What do you got? Who do I know? I know Grace. Grace, what do you got? What do you want to take away?
So we want to know how to explore into industry.
So how do you explore?
All our life has been exposed to academia, but we want to know what else we can do
Okay.
in industry.
Beautiful, beautiful. Who else we got? Yeah, one.
How to craft a compelling story.
Yep. Explore, craft. Don't be shy. What do you guys got? Anybody else?
Translate your academic experience into something relevant to the company we're going.
Woo, huge, folks. So this whole idea of transferable, right? How am I going to take some stuff that's been in a lab and be able to get some language around it so that it's compelling to a human being who maybe hasn't kicked it in the lab one day in their life, right? Yeah. All right. Anybody else? Come on now.
Advertising those skills. Advertising those skills.
Advertising, yeah, absolutely. So how do you message out?
Especially against people that have MBAs and have other degrees and have those skill sets that they're looking for.
Right. Okay. So how do we want to say that in English? I think we get it, right? All right. Anything else you guys came up with? Yeah, please. And if I can get a name too.
Vivi.
Vivi.
And managing up.
Managing up. So can you give an example?
Just more effectively getting your mentors to support your career.
Yeah, good call. How to get your advocates and your champs to promote, right?
Yes.
Is that tough?
Can be, depends.
All right. Anything else? Where are you guys? Yeah, please.
Caitlin.
Caitlin.
How do you stand up against, like you were saying, similar people? How do you stand out in your application?
Yeah.
And your story?
So all this unique, distinguish. How do you be distinct? Yeah. How are you unique, Caitlin? You have a sense?
This round probably not very unique.
So here's really interesting, you guys, is that a lot of times when I'm working with folks, they somehow think that their story's bland, been there, done that, everyone else has sort of lived that same journey. A lot of what we're trying to do as coaches is start to tease out and for you to realize like, oh snap, that is actually pretty interesting. So again, I don't know, has anyone here worked with a coach? You're a coach? Okay. Yeah, great, good. So I just want to put that out there to everyone, that there is a lot in your background, in your history, in your journey that is very unique to who you are. And a lot of the times, and we're going to talk about honest, courageous stories of how to reach for that and not go for the, I'm innovative and I'm very collaborative and I do influence without authority. No. I will call, excuse my French, but I will call bullshit on that. And most recruiters will as well. They do not want to hear a Robotron kind of produced keyword answers. Not so much. Okay. And I was just talking to, was it Kathy about this? Yeah, we were just talking about that. Great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend about 4 minutes and 27 seconds going over a very simple career strategy framework. And I'm going to give you a handout later on it, so no need for notes. We're then going to step into how to craft your story. Does that sound interesting? Yeah, cool. So I'm going to move fairly quickly. If you have questions, go for it. But really, at the end of the day, and this is a, I usually work till whiteboards. This is, I feel like this is throwback. Yeah, right. So here's the career strategy framework. Classic. North Star. What the heck is your North Star, right? Are you trying to do data analytics for one of these fancy schmancy companies that have, you know, give you massage and free foods and all that good stuff, right? Are you looking to, what are some other routes you guys might go? What's that? Consulting, for sure. What are some other routes? Somebody over here? What are some other things you guys are thinking about? Doing some project management? Right.
VC.
VC? Well, time out. So when you say VC, tell me about VC.
VC consulting.
VC consulting, okay.
Or seeing it start out.
Great, absolutely, entrepreneur start. So it's okay, you guys, if you don't know what your North Star is. But as you go through the career search process, knowing where the heck you're going is going to inform choices along the way, right? It's not rocket science in that sense. And it's okay to not know, but at some point you need to be clear of like, oh right, North Star, that's where I'm heading. So one of the big things that you do when going for the North Star is what's your story? What is your narrative? How do you talk about being, how many years you guys been in the lab by now? Let's just say 5+, 3+, whatever that is. Not a plus. All right. Is you're trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to go and talk about some of the things that I've done, and also things maybe outside of the lab that you're involved with, Curiums and different things and such, to craft a compelling story. Not only that, to craft a crisp story that speaks into what the heck the job opportunity is looking for. So a lot of what I'm going to point to, and that's why we're going to spend most of our time, is on story. So like any good models, and you guys know more than me, is you draw big circles, right? That's usually a sign of a good model. So I'll do that. 4-phased approach. Again, we have handouts, so don't. First phase is self-assess. What, 2 S's? What we're trying to figure out is what's in your toolbox, okay? So when I say that, you're trying to really get a better sense of what are all the different tools that you have in your toolbox. What are some of the tools you guys got? Again, not all at once.
Analytical skills.
Analytical, so you can help me a little bit more about such as
Data analysis.
data analysis. Okay, great. What are some other skills you guys got?
Time management.
What's that?
Time management.
Time management, absolutely, just right. Anybody else?
Problem solving.
Problem solving, great.
Teaching.
Teaching, absolutely, great. Anybody else?
Teamwork.
Teamwork, great. So one of the things we're trying to figure out is you may have a bunch of tools, but you're trying to figure out what are the tools that you want to take going forward. What is it that you're trying to highlight? Okay, so one of the things I find with people is that when they start to get in conversation, they all of a sudden do this kind of waterfall of, look at how great I am, look at all these things, and it's overwhelming, or there isn't a crispness to it. So part of what we're trying to figure out is, what is the person across from you going to be interested in? And we're going to talk more about that in the story, but figuring out from all the tools that you have, which are the ones that are going to be relevant to a conversation that you're having with somebody. You're mad dogging me back there. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that maybe it's more important what I think is relevant.
Right, right. And so this is an interesting, and we'll talk about this in the storytelling of getting a little empathy for the human being that's across from you, right? A little compassion in the sense of what is it that they're going to be interested in. Great call. Your name?
Leonardo.
Ah, let's see. The second phase is, and then I think this is the most invaluable, is the explore phase. And I think this talks a little bit about, Cammie and I were talking about kind of like what are the paths, what it might be some of the different paths, what is kind of really involved, and what does it take to do these different things in industry. So in explore, what you're doing is you're connecting with other human beings in real time who are doing what you think you might want to do. So this might be a data analytics person, this might be a consulting person, this might be another kind of person that I can't think of right now. What's happening here is you're starting to begin to understand and move from this sense of like, oh, consulting's cool, and I get to check out all these different industries, and I get to hang out with CEOs, and to actually seeing what is the reality. Like, oh snap, I need to be on a plane 3 weeks out of the month, and I don't get to see anybody, and this work, they're grinding me, whatever, right? So you start to demystify. What also happens is, as you talk to these people, you're always asking, what are 2 other people that would be interesting for me to chat with? So you're starting to expand the sense of your network and who you're connected to. Right? You guys with me? Agree, disagree, don't care.
Agree.
Agree, what do you agree with?
Agree to explain it, that's for
Thank you. One of the questions is, so how the heck do I find these people? You guys have that question or no? You know where to find them? Vivi, you know where to find them?
2 people you already know, LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, already know. Please tap into your alumni. Please tap into these groups. Please tap into folks who have already done it. I know we're all special snowflakes, right? And we like to think we're the first that ever done everything. But the reality is there's a bunch of folks who've already done it. And let's start to figure out and better and make those connections. What happens here, as you start to talk to folks, is you're going to better understand what are the gaps. Right? So you're going to move from this romantic theoretical notion of what consulting or product management is, or being an entrepreneur, and then going, oh, gotcha. Okay, here are the skills, here are, I hate this word, competencies, here's the experiences that I need in order to be a compelling candidate. Better understanding your gaps will help inform how to use your time while you're in your program. Am I losing you guys? It's just so quiet. The other thing, what happens here, as you start to talk to these people, what's really interesting is you start to get your profile of the kind of company, the kind of organization, the kind of culture that you ideally want to work with. This is really important. So as you talk to folks, you're starting to get a better sense of like, oh, not so much on the big, feeling the more of the small, medium, really like this type of culture, which is a little more flat and actually appreciates a scientific approach, etc. So being able to better get a better sense of what that profile is huge. Third phase is after you've really dropped in and checked out your own backyard, you peeped out the front yard, and now what you have is what is your message or your offering. So I don't use the B word. I think you brand animals, not people. But basically, that's what this is, right? Your professional brand. How are you going out into the world, connecting and communicating with people such that they get it? They're like, Oh, so you're doing a PhD or postdoc, and okay, great. So you want to be doing this position. Gotcha. I can connect the dots. You're not making them guess. What also happens here is not only do you get your message you're offering, which is a really powerful place to be when you're in a conversation, is you also get really clear on your ask. Oh, might you know some people who fit this profile? Okay? So it's one thing to be really clear about, here's my kryptonite, here's why I'm a badass, and you'd be a fool not to bring me on the team. But it's another thing to actually be able to say, oh, and by the way, I'm looking for a small, medium, mobile computing in the Bay Area that's looking for a data analytics that has a background in, right? Starts to shift the conversation, because all of a sudden, I can start thinking through my digital Rolodex, oh, cool, who do I need to dial this person in with? Last but not least is, and excuse me for being technical on this one, get the gig. Right? So the reality is in the year 2015 AD, Bay Area, that most likely your next gig will come through a relationship. Can I get an amen on that? All right. Or however, shalom, shalom. However we want to do on that. So I really want to point that out to you, and that's really why I started the whole workshop, was you just literally getting in front of another human being you don't know and starting to have those conversations. The more folks you know, the more possibilities there are for that gig. So in this fourth phase, in the get the gig, what you're wanting to do is you want to line up your advocates and your champions. And I know someone was asking, I think Vivi was asking about advocates and promote. So you're always kind of thinking, it's a little bit of way of being, of really engaging, doing wonderful work, and letting folks know. And we all, I'm sure, are mentoring other people in certain kinds of ways, that it's very much soul food. And so being able to kind of get over yourself a little bit and start letting folks know, hey, I think it would be really important if you'd be willing to write this recommendation, or if you could put out a call, or if you could follow up with this email, etc. The final thing, and this is around get the gig, is making sure that the opportunity that you step into actually is lined up with who you are and what's important. So that's a whole other workshop, which is a values-based workshop, which actually means I care about something, and my sense is the more that we care about things, the more apt that we're able to step in and people really respond to that. So we'll do that next year or next time. Any questions about this? Helpful, not so helpful?
The rowdy.
Please, who, what? Somebody, what? Helpful how?
Helpful.
Helpful.
Gives
Man, you
framework.
guys are a tough crowd. Damn. How so? What's helpful?
Gives a framework. There is a plan. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
I like organized things.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else?
I concur.
You went.
I
You did.
concur.
Where are you guys in this sort of four-phase approach? Whether it be self-assess, starting to explore. Cammie, what do you got?
Somewhere between 1 and 2.
Yeah. Classic. So a lot of times 1 and 2 hang out at the same time. So there's a little bit of parallel going on. Because what happens is, as you talk to folks, you're like, no. And then you're like, so other people are like, whoa, really? Is there that whole other world? And so it really starts to open up in the sense of what is important to you, and doing that sort of evaluation, exploration at the same time. Right. Okay, we're going to shift gears. Any last comments? You're going to get a handout? Stories. We're going to go into story time. So, can I make this go away, or can you guys see this?
Yes.
This is all fancy. Ah. This is called a story tool. And I'm going to spend about 6 minutes on it. And then what do you know, you guys are going to break up into little story pods. So the main thing here is no big surprise, triangle. I don't know what it is about the threes, but they definitely got a monopoly on simplicity. So here's what you're doing. What you're trying to figure out is who's your audience. Who might be some of your guys' audiences?
Hiring managers.
Hiring managers, beautiful. Gentleman in the back who was mad dogging me. Where do you want to work?
Maybe be a professor.
A professor? Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. So it'd be academia, committee. Great. Anybody else? Kat?
No, client.
A client? Okay, great. Anybody else?
One of the people you're networking with from
Yeah.
LinkedIn or?
Absolutely, absolutely. So one of the things I really invite you guys to do is take the time to get a better sense of who is that person across from you, right? And not, I mean, again, I've been coaching for a couple years, and I get a lot of times people will literally read the webpage 15 minutes before they're about to go into the conversation. Not so much. I mean, it's kind of funny and it's kind of not. Because the reality is the person across from you is going to be like, wow, these questions are pretty lame. They are very topical and they really haven't been thoughtful. And there's no depth to them. Okay? So we can talk about how to do research on your audience, but I just kind of want to kind of put this out there. What we're doing now is we're thinking about what are the top 3 things that we're going to want to highlight in a conversation. So when we talk about story, it can be everything from there you are at Whole Foods and you bump into Mr. or Mrs. BCG, or all of a sudden you realize that your neighbor is the vice president of all things groovy at Google, right? Or whatever, right? So there can be that kind of informal all the way to informational interviews, all the way to an actual real life interview. So when we think about story, I want you to think about sort of there's a kind of a scale that can be everything from 15 to 20 seconds to, and we all know some of the interviews can go, you know, you can be 3 or 4 hours working with or a conversation with people. So, and I don't like to say sales pitch or elevator pitch or, I think like that feeling of just like trying to sell something to somebody, it's more, I use, and I'm a coach, it's coaching language, what's your message, what's your offering? Okay? So I try to work away, even language-wise, trying to move us from some sense of like we're trying to sell ourselves. Other coaches will have very different ideas about that. I was born and raised in Berkeley, so please forgive me. All right. So let's take an example. Or actually, let me back up and we'll get to the example in a second. The other thing we're trying to do is figure out, and this is why I was given, trying to sit with Caitlin for a little bit, on what makes you unique, right? So what's that little thing that makes you unique? Because I don't know about you, who here has hired people? Okay. So one of the things that happens when you're hiring is you probably look at a lot of different faces in one day. And you're trying to kind of remember what is that sticky something that is actually going to be memorable. So that's why I was kind of trying to think about the whole unique stuff. The other part here too is what is your overall theme? How are you positioning yourself? Okay. Last but not least, for each of these 3 areas, we're going to do a really simple, are any ramblers here? You guys ramble on? Backstories? Just keep going for it? No? You guys deaf mutes? What's happening? So what we're trying to do here is very quickly, there's a very simple way to own it, ground it, and then point to impact. It's a little bit, do you guys use PAR statements at all?
No, I don't know if that is.
Great, good, don't use them. Don't even say I mentioned it, but it's what's the problem, what's the action, what's the result? right? It's the same deal. It's a little bit more juicy on this own it, ground it, and point to impact. I'll talk about it in 2 seconds. So somebody want to give me an example of who might be their audience? Yeah.
So I'm going to meet with a friend of a friend
Yeah, great.
next week or something,
Good.
and they work at a company I'm interested in.
Good, good. Do you mind telling us about the company?
Yeah, it's 23andMe.
23?
23andMe, they do
Yeah.
personal genetics, yeah.
And what might, great. And what are the things that you might want to highlight? Because this person, so here's a classic scenario, right? A friend of friends, someone's been kind enough, sorry, your name is? Stephanie, Luke, is been kind enough to introduce you guys. And you want to think about, because obviously you, in informational interviews, you want to get really curious. And again, you want to do your homework so you're not just saying, oh, so you got funded 3 years ago and you're still having a hard time. But you really want to get a better sense of, you know, who are they partnering with, what kinds of different offerings, etc. He or she's going to probably ask you, like, so give me a little bit of sense of what you're interested in. So this is your cue to be able to highlight 3 things. So what might those be?
Translating science, like kind of technical information into something lay people can understand.
Uh-huh. What else?
Working in science education.
Science ed, great. What else?
That's going to be harder.
We can hold off on the third one.
Yeah.
What's your sense? Do you have a sense of what makes you unique, or what might be something in your background that would be memorable?
Probably that while I've been in grad school, I've worked on a couple of those things at different levels, like from translating my small field to be understandable to people like scientists in general, like university students, and then like 3rd graders.
Okay, great. So you've done the whole gambit from kindergarten all the way up.
Yeah.
Great. Great. We know what that is. How might you position yourself if somebody would say, you know, I know this is, so this whole positioning and what's your sort of overall theme, this takes a little bit of kind of really working out. So I just want to say that it's useful in the sense of this theme or position here can really help in many ways tie these together, right? Otherwise we got, I'm the interpreter of tech to lay, and let me tell you about all my groovy sunset, right? And if we were to work together, there may be an actual theme here which could hold this, be the container for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm going to do is just give you an example of own it, ground it, point to impact for science ed. Literally since junior high, I've loved working in science ed, and over the last 6 months, I've worked with both junior high, high school, as well as undergrads on a initiative that was funded by NIH. And really, at the end of the day, I'm known within my organization as someone who's not only advocating for science ed, but I believe that it is something that's going to make a difference, and that's why I came back to school to get my PhD. You see how that works? So I owned it. I really love this. I've been doing it since the 7th grade. I grounded it. I gave somebody some sense of junior high, high school, and undergrads over the last 6 months with a grant that was funded by NIH. And then I talked a little bit about the impact of how this has not only impacted me, but you could also talk about your reputation within the organization. You guys get that? Helpful? Not so helpful?
So maybe a little bit more concrete about what is
What is our?
Grounded.
Grounded. Yeah. So that's a great question. Grounded is it's numbers, dollars, increase, decrease over time, trending up, trending down, right? It's a way of measuring. So if I said to you guys, yeah, I've been doing career coaching for a long time. Or if I said, I've been doing career coaching for the last 14 years, have coached well over 500 plus coachees, and specifically in the Bay Area with high tech, Google and Box.com being the two companies that work specifically. So you feel it just has more of a grounding, there's a there. A lot of times when I'm working with people on mock interviews, they're flying 30,000 foot, and again, just kind of a bad example, but I'm really collaborative, I believe in innovation, and I'm very disruptive, and I'm like, yeah, come on in, please. Okay? So, go ahead and make a triangle. Go pull out a piece of paper, make a triangle. Alrighty, so here's the game plan. What I want you to do is in the middle of the triangle, choose your audience, who it is that you want to have a conversation. If it's an informational, if it's it may even be meeting with somebody who could be a potential sponsor or advocate. Choose the 3 things that you're going to want to focus on. Think about something that's unique. And then for one of those 3 things, I want you to start talking through or writing through what does own it feel like. And own it can be confidence without attitude. It's like, I'm really good at this, and this is my sweet spot, and I want to do a lot more of it. So a lot of this, you guys, is being able to feel comfortable being able to say, I'm really good at this. And I know it goes against my personal family culture, it goes against, I'm supposed to be humble. You feel me? And so I want you to pick one of those 3s to do an own it, ground it, and what is the ongoing impact. Question, yeah.
So are there 3 things about yourself that you're telling the person, or are there 3 things you want to know from them? Like, just to clarify a little bit.
For this one, we're doing it for who you are. Right. Great question. Any other questions? So let's take 300 seconds.
So the 2 things are the 3 grounded. That's really good. It's really good.
It's the vignette. Just take a couple more minutes. get you guys to come back? May we rise and shine. Stand up. Go ahead and find your new best friend. That other new best friend that you didn't think existed. And before you do that, you guys, before you do that, what I want you to do is I want you to start talking through your story. I want you to both kind of give each other some time to say, here are the 3 things given my audience. Here's what I'm thinking about might be something that's unique. Here's possibly a way that I'm going to position or have a theme in terms of that. So go ahead and there they go. What was that like?
Thank you, guys.
How so? You said good.
It was great because both of us are having informational type interviews coming up, so talking about the obstacles that we have and what skills that we belittle from being scientists and different things that we've done and how that can be translated.
Great. Do you mind sharing one of the skills?
So her example is our young board.
Yeah.
So I guess I can talk about my example then.
Yeah.
So I have a phone interview with a principal at a small consulting firm tomorrow afternoon after having spoken to one of the partners of the firm last week. So I don't know if it's an informational interview or if it's a proper interview and how to go into that. And talking about that I've started to join the consulting club to do case studies and teaching myself business stuff and then my scientific knowledge to apply to many different fields and my ability to communicate complex ideas.
And if you want to chat about that, the interview, we can chat afterwards.
Okay.
Can we give it up for Jess for getting interviewed? So I think this is also really important. Don't be a hater and really support each other. No, I think, honestly, I think this is really important because the reality is we are all interdependent. You guys know this more than we do from a scientific approach. That it's really important to help celebrate other folks because we all move up together. And don't get me on my soapbox, but I just want to put that out there. Anybody else? What was it like? Wow. Serious? Wait.
It's clear to me that I need to work on this more. I wasn't really necessarily, I don't think I produced something that would work well in an actual situation.
And just so you guys know that I use the story tool a lot because it's a simple framework you can hang some stuff on. I haven't even talked about all the subtleties of vertical launch. There's all kinds of storytelling tools that you'll get in the handout to start to play to make it more, have more depth. But this is at least a beginning to get yourself thinking about, oh right, let me start to think about what are some of the major areas. Right? Anybody else? Yeah, Mike.
I'm not used to telling my message in 5 minutes. I've always practiced either a minute or like going full 30 minutes with a and like pointing, that's what I did, that's what I did, that's what I did. So it's great to practice it without sort of a resume hanging in the interviewer's hands.
And so I just want to say one thing about, I am not a huge fan of resumes, and that may sound weird coming from a career coach, but in many ways they can be sort of a prep, they can get you ready. Please, when you start doing some of your interviews, don't be linear. Don't say, here's where I went to undergrad, and then I did this, because folks are going to glaze in about 7 seconds. What you want to do, and this is vertical launch, is say, 2 months ago when I was working on this project, I completely realized that consulting was where I wanted to go because of. So all of a sudden you're almost like grabbing the back of the neck of the interviewer and going, whoo, we're about to go for a ride, buddy. Okay. What else did you guys notice or observe? Yeah, please.
Me and my partner, we were talking about.
Do you know her name?
Huh?
Her name?
Catherine.
Okay, good. Knowing names is good. I didn't mean to put you on Front Street, but putting names is good.
Okay. Linda, by the way.
Great, good. Luke.
Okay, yeah. We were talking about, as scientists, we believe we are all very good problem solver, but as a problem solver, we don't know how to come up a very specific, compelling story because we do it every time, every day. because we all, as a scientist, we do like troubleshooting all the time. So we came up with solutions, but how do you kind of
Right.
put
And
things?
not to sound cheesy, but fish don't know they're in water kind of thing,
Yeah,
kind of same gig.
yeah.
Yeah, I would start thinking about, and there's a whole, and you guys know this, do you guys do any design thinking stuff? Does that come into the part? So there's a lot of people are more interested in problem finding than in problem solving. So we can talk more, again, there's other, but a lot of folks, especially in entrepreneur, is like, are you finding the problems? We can all solve problems. But are you actually exploring and trying to get a couple steps ahead? Doesn't answer your question, but I wanted to throw it out there. I think the way to think about it is start to take a look at a couple projects that you really loved, that you felt really connected to, and you had this sense of almost losing time because you were so just in it. That's a great way to start what we call peak experiences, or highlight experiences, and start thinking about what was that process. What's your process? Do you throw Post-its up on a whiteboard? Do you, go sleep on it? Do you, whatever those things, start thinking about your relationship to those different kinds of challenges. Does that help them? Yeah, PJ.
Your point just brought to my mind in that this thinking of the next problem.
Yeah.
It's something that we've been trained to do since we started grad school.
Right.
To write our proposals, basically plan out what our whole PhD is, thinking of what the next problem is going to be. So just kind of need to change that mindset, package it differently.
Right. Some of this, and thanks, PJ. Some of this might be reframing, right? Of stuff you're already doing. Because Ben had mentioned this is like writing a grant, right? The triangle. So, first of all, I just want to say thank you guys. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do this. I threw up my email, and feel free to reach out. I think we're the two organizations trying to figure out kind of what might be some next steps to continue to support you guys, depending on what your needs and what makes sense. So with that, thank you. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, question.
No, just in case, sorry.
Yeah, no, please. Yeah, Kim.
Within the story tool triangle,
Yeah.
as far as finding something to own ground impact, am I trying to summarize that triangle and the components jumping off from it, or am I taking one, like say, highlight point and building a story around that?
Right. So is this Stephanie?
Candy.
Oh no, but you
Yeah,
are.
I'm
Stephanie, yeah. So Stephanie, yeah. Is so for each vignette, you're going to do an own it, ground it, point to impact.
Okay.
Right? So Stephanie's science ed is going to be I'm loving it. Did it 3 months ago. This paper that I did 2 years ago. So own it, ground it, point to impact is going to happen for each of the vignettes. Great question. Anybody else? Yeah.
What advice would you give? Because I'm just thinking back, as I was doing my postdoc, I remember having this feeling of, I'm surrounded by other PhDs and postdocs. How am I any different than any of these other guys? Why do I deserve this position I'm going for any better?
Yeah.
And you're trying to pull all these great things about yourself out. And I think, in retrospect, it's super important, like you say in that first set there, talking about what do you really want? What's your profile? What is your ideal job? And I think a lot of PhDs get hung up on this idea of, I just need to get out of this current situation and into the first job in industry, the first thing, just get my toe in the door into this next thing, and then I'll figure the rest of it out.
Right.
What would you say to that, and how does this help you, beyond that, and what's the consequences of not going through?
George, that's a lot of question, and I'm really hungry and but I appreciate it. But my sense is, and let me just get the spirit of it, is how do you get your first break?
Sure.
Right? Is that,
within? And why is it really important to think through the story?
Yeah.
And what you really want for yourself,
yeah,
rather than just, you know what, I think consulting's for me, I'm going to just go for it.
So I work with a lot of people who, and this is a very disrespectful term, but are lemmings. They're just following the group. There's groupthink. And there's a sense of like, oh, everything's going for consulting, then I guess I'm paying all this money and doing all this, I guess I'm doing consulting now. And a lot of times, again, what I will do is I'll call BS and say, okay, what specifically is it about consulting that you're drawn to? Kathy and I had this question, or conversation, I think, prior. And so I think what you need to do is have some real heart-to-heart conversations. And if we go back to this second phase of explore, I think what happens is you start to demystify and you start to get a real sense of, is this lining up with what actually is really important to me? I work with a lot of people who want to go into consulting and they also want to have 3 children. Wow, that's deep. You know, and so, you know, really being honest with yourself in terms of what's fit and feasibility. And so, I don't know if that's partially answering your question. Yeah. So, we're going to have handouts for you guys out. I'll take these up there so you can take one as you go. And pretty much what it is both of these models just to kind of spark your memory and such. And thank you again.